History is a fragile chain of events, held together by decisions made in the heat of passion or the cold calculation of war. But what happens when the most pivotal link in that chain simply never breaks?
December 7th, 1941.
But in this reality, the Japanese High Command makes a different choice. The planes stay on the carriers. The torpedoes remain in their racks. Admiral Yamamoto's finger hovers over the map of Hawaii, but then he pulls back. The order to attack is never given.
Pearl Harbor remains a peaceful tropical outpost. The American Pacific Fleet sleeps on.
Without the surprise attack, the American public remains divided.
While America sleeps, Japan turns its full gaze toward the south, not toward Hawaii, but toward the resource-rich colonies of Asia. They seize the oil of the East Indies and the rubber of Malaya. Without a US entry into the war, there is no one to stop them. By 1942, the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere is no longer a dream. It is a terrifying reality spanning half the globe. But the real tragedy is unfolding across the Atlantic. In Europe, the British Empire is standing on the edge of an abyss. Without American supplies and manpower, the Soviet Union begins to buckle under the weight of the German war machine. Operation Barbarossa is a success. Stalingrad falls. The oil of the Caucasus now fuels the Reich.
In our world, the D-Day landing saved Europe. In this world, there is no D-Day.
By 1945, the war in Europe is over. Not with a bang, but with a whimper of surrender. The continent is a silent tomb of iron.
But what about the United States? Safe behind its two oceans, it watches as the world falls into darkness. The 1950s arrive, but there is no economic boom, no suburban dream. America is a lonely island in a sea of empires. The Iron Curtain is not in Berlin. It is around the entire Western Hemisphere. Trade has stopped. The American economy is suffocating. Resources are scarce. Rations are a way of life. To the west, the Japanese Empire has become a technological titan. They control the Pacific, from Tokyo to the shores of California.
Their navy is the largest the world has ever seen. Their Yamato-class battleships are now floating fortresses of steel.
In the east, Germany has built Germania, the city of Hitler's dreams. A cold...
The two empires do not fight. They have divided the world.
Science has taken a dark turn. Without the pressure of a global war, the atomic bomb was never completed in New Mexico.
Instead, German scientists perfected the orbital mirror, a weapon that could incinerate a city from space using the sun's rays.
Japan, meanwhile, mastered biological warfare. They turned the jungles of Asia into labs for the ultimate virus.
Fear is the only thing that keeps the peace. A triple polar Cold War begins between the Reich, the Empire, and
the American culture begins to rot from within. Paranoid and alone, the government turns into a police state.
The Constitution is suspended. The Bill of Rights is a forgotten relic. Security is the new religion.
By the 1970s, the world is a digital prison. The Reich has invented the Great Eye, a network of cameras that watches every citizen.
resistance is impossible. Even your thoughts are monitored by neurological scanning developed in the labs of Berlin.
The oceans are no longer highways of trade. They are minefields. No one leaves. No one enters. Language itself is dying. English is banned in Europe. Only German is spoken from the Atlantic to the Urals.
In Asia, the new order has erased the borders of India, China, and Australia. They are now just numbered districts.
The Great Barrier Reef is gone, replaced by underwater factories and mining drones. But in this world of absolute control, something is happening in the shadows of the United States.
They call themselves the 7th Decembers, a secret society dedicated to the date that never happened.
Their goal is simple: to start the war that should have happened 40 years ago. To provoke Japan into an attack.
They believe that only through total destruction can the world find its way back to the light.
The response is immediate. The sleeping giant of Japan wakes up, not as a victim, but as an executioner.
But it's too late. The Reich sees the Japanese move as a breach of their treaty. The two empires turn on each other.
The world is finally at war. But it's not a war for freedom. It's a war for total extinction.
History didn't end at Pearl Harbor. It just took a long, dark detour to reach the same inevitable conclusion.
In the end, we were always destined to burn. The only difference was the date.
The silence that followed was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of the grave. Within hours, the grand cities of Germania and the high-tech hubs of Tokyo were reduced to radioactive shadows on the pavement. The orbital mirrors of the Reich, intended to rule the Earth, became their funeral pyres as they crashed back into the atmosphere.
In America, the bunkers built for the elite became their permanent tombs. The keys were lost in the fire.
The 7th Decembers, the rebels who started it all, died knowing they had won. But their victory was a world of ash.
Decades passed. The radioactive clouds finally cleared, revealing a planet that had forgotten the names of its masters.
Nature, the only empire that truly lasts, began to reclaim the iron and concrete of the 20th century.
The great district maps of Asia were washed away by the tides, leaving the continents nameless once again.
In their legends, there was a myth of a great choice, a moment when the world could have taken a different path. They found relics, a rusted white glove, a map of a place called Hawaii, things that meant nothing to them.
They lived in a world of peace, but it was a peace bought with the total destruction of everything that came before.
What if Yamamoto had given the order? What if the planes had flown that morning in 1941? In our world, that attack brought pain, but it also brought a sleeping giant to its feet. It brought the end of tyranny.
It was a tragedy that saved the future, a sacrifice that ensured the Reich would fall and the empire would crumble. But in this shadow timeline, the avoidance of that tragedy led to a much deeper, much darker ending. It is the great irony of history. Sometimes, the worst day in our memory is the only thing standing between us and total oblivion. We look back at Pearl Harbor and see a day of infamy. But in the grand scheme of the universe, now we are left with a ghost world. A timeline where the sun never rose because it was never allowed to set. Every decision has a shadow, and the larger the decision, the longer the shadow it casts across the centuries.
But remember, the chain of history is still being forged. Every day, we make the decisions.
Will we choose the path of the light? Or will we let the shadow of our decisions consume us?
The shadow timelines are always there, waiting just one wrong decision away.
They are the echoes of what could have been. The warnings from a world that never was.
If we forget the lessons of the past, we are doomed to repeat the tragedies of the shadow.
So we look at the ships in the harbor, we look at the planes in the sky, and we say thank you.
Thank you for the fire that woke us up. Thank you for the sacrifice that kept us free.
Because the alternative was a world where we never learned to fight for what is right.
A world where the greater co-prosperity sphere and the 1,000-year Reich became the only truth.
A world where humanity became a machine and the soul became a relic of the past.
Let this be a reminder. Peace is not just the absence of war. It is the presence of justice.
And justice
often requires a price that history is never prepared to pay.
The next time you see the sunrise, remember the morning of December 7th.
Without it, we wouldn't be here. We would be part of the shadow.
We are the children of the infamy. We are the fruit of the fire.
And as long as we remember, the shadow can never return.
The timeline is secure. For now.
But history is always watching, waiting for the next link to break.
What will you choose when your moment comes?
Will you step into the light? Or will you join the shadow timelines?
The answer lies within you, and within the choices you make today.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the dark.
If you enjoyed this exploration of alternate history, subscribe to Shadow Timelines for more stories of the worlds that could have been. What what-if scenario should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below.
Until next time, stay curious and keep an eye on the shadows.